Okay, hi everyone. My name is Janie Kind, and our guest speaker today is Michelle Hu, a pediatric audiologist, and I found her on Instagram and Facebook, and what she shared with me resonated so much she shared about hearing loss and coping and technologies, and I liked what she shared so much that a lot of her stuff I shared on our chapter newsletter. And so it's all there with her permission. And so even my daughter follows her on Instagram now. And I think she's really great. And I appreciate that she has agreed to join us today and share her story about her CI decision and her implantation and post-implantation experience. So thank you, Michelle, and take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Janie, for having me and to your chapters. And I know there's a few people sprinkled about that aren't a part of your Peninsula chapter. I'm just really happy to be here. I was born with hearing loss, mild. I wasn't diagnosed until I was about 3 or 4 years old, since they didn't yet do newborn hearing screenings in the 1980s. And I was fit with hearing aids pretty soon after that. At the time, my parents spoke English and Chinese at the home. And because I only had a mild hearing loss at that time, the hearing aids were pretty beneficial for me. Because of that, they wanted to continue with spoken language. My hearing loss is as a result of something called EVAS, or enlarged vestibular aqueduct syndrome. EVAS, V, not B. And with that syndrome, every time I bumped my head, my hearing would get worse. So by around age 10, I had bilateral profound hearing loss in both ears. At that time, audiologically speaking, professionals said that I was a cochlear implant candidate, but my parents weren't ready yet. They felt like technology wasn't there. They felt like I was getting by. And what they didn't know was how hard I was working in school. One analogy that I use is the duck paddling across the water. They're paddling furiously underneath that water just to appear calm, cool, and collected. And who knows, maybe they're ignoring some of the things that other people are saying, just smiling at the right time, watching everybody else, laughing, smiling, nodding at the appropriate times just to get by. So I grew up being a really good faker, just being able to navigate and analyze and blend in with different conversations. One coping strategy that I used was pointing all of the questions on somebody else so that it would appear that I'm interested, appear that I'm listening, and they're getting a lot of attention, but they're doing all of the talking while I could sit back and relax, listen to some of it, and just get by it. And I didn't know that I was doing this. This was just something that I was naturally kind of, survival of the fittest. This is what I'm doing to figure out how can I survive in this situation? How can I get by and appear like I am totally involved, completely a part of this conversation, and nobody's gonna know. This was my own little secret. So it was a journey for me. I didn't get cochlear implants until I was about 27 years old. And it was when I discovered what cochlear implants were during graduate school. Janie mentioned I'm a pediatric audiologist now. I've been practicing for over 13 years. I'm down in San Diego. I do work at a children's hospital, but I'm not pediatric exclusive. So while I have patients that are, 1-year-old, 2 years old, 5 years old, teenagers, I still have patients that are in their 80s and 90s. Some people pursue cochlear implantation in their 80s and 90s, and many times one of the first questions that comes up to mind is, am I too old? Should I undergo this? And what I ask them is, what is it that you want out of life? a device, if you should be found a good candidate, will only add to your quality of life with verbal and spoken communication. So I think for me, when I first got my hearing aids when I was about 4 years old, the world just opened up with color. Now I'm 3 or 4 years old at the time, so I don't really know what I'm missing. Versus if you were to acquire a hearing loss later in life, I think it's actually harder because you do know what you're missing. You do remember what sounds, what kind of conversations, the confidence that you had in noisy situations. You remember that confidence and you miss it. So it's hard to process and really continue and kind of get used to your new listening world with if you remember what you're missing. So as a 3-year-old, I think it was actually easier to grow up with a hearing loss than it is to acquire one later in life. A cochlear implant is definitely not a cure. At the end of the night, I still take off my devices and I'm profoundly deaf at night. I would feel a fire truck siren next to me before I would hear it. And hearing people can't understand that. They're like, what do you mean? You have to hear something. No, I would equate it to taking a dive into the ocean on a moonless night and you can't see your hand in front of you at all. Like my hand is light colored and I can't see my hand in front of you myself. That is how much hearing I don't have without technology. When I learned about cochlear implants in graduate school, I went home to my dad. I said, did you know about this technology? Did you know that there's some kind of surgery that would insert an electrode into my cochlea, that snail shell portion in my ear, and I could stimulate the hearing nerve directly? So the sound actually bypasses, this is, my pinna or my outer ear. It bypasses that, bypasses the eardrum, bypasses the bones, and then goes straight to that nerve. So the sound goes into, here's my cochlear implant processor. The sound goes into here, microphones on top. This is basically the computer processing all of the sound. This part on the bottom is just a battery. The sound goes through this coil. You don't need to decorate it like I did. And this portion is a magnet sending the electrical signals across the skin flap to the processor and electrode that's been placed into my ear by surgery. Most of the time, the residual hearing that you have in your ear is no longer useful. Sometimes it's destroyed, but with new advances in the technique with the surgery, many times it is often preserved. But most of my patients do not wear their hearing aid anymore because the sound with their cochlear implant is so much better. It's not better right away. By all means, you wait maybe a couple of weeks after surgery to make sure you're healed, make sure the swelling goes down, activate it. And I like to tell patients and parents that it's like giving a blind man vision. He doesn't know what red or blue is. You have to show it to him, take it away, show it to him again, and he's starting to build that muscle memory in that brain, a library of sounds or visuals, if you want to go back to that analogy. And it's also very, very soft. If I were to turn the lights on in the bathroom at midnight, it's going to be way too bright because your eyes have grown accustomed slowly to the darkness at night. All of a sudden you're turning the light or the sound on, is too much. So it takes a process after you go through surgery to get used to that sound, just baby steps. And what we do at my clinic is we have them come for activation. We have them come a few days, or maybe a week after that activation to get used to the soft programs I program in there, and increase it a little bit. See where you are, increase it a little bit more, and fine tune the sounds like an equalizer on a stereo. That's what I get to do with the high pitches, the low pitches, based upon how you respond to my voice or testing in the booth. And with that, it gets fine-tuned specifically to you, because everybody's hearing nerve is different, even right and left side. For me, my right side, or I'm sorry, my left side is the one that I did first. I did my worst ear first. And I did this because I didn't have that much to lose there. Excuse me. However, I did wear a hearing aid for most of my life on that ear to stimulate that muscle. It took me maybe a few months, I would say 4 to 5 months, for the sound to really smooth out. Is the right, I'm not sure, smooth out or sound natural, because you turn that sound on and your ear nerve or the brain hasn't been stimulated electrically ever. Up until I had that cochlear implant, my nerve was stimulated acoustically. So it's different kind of input, different way for the brain to grow neural pathways. And all of a sudden, this new signal is coming in. It sounded very robotic at first. It sounded very high pitch because I hadn't heard high pitches in a very long time. It wasn't that they were louder. It was just more apparent because I hadn't heard it in a long time. If that makes sense. And it sounded very staccato, like just but, and everything was at the same volume. My mom's voice would be, she would be talking and the printer would go off. And I couldn't sort the two different sounds out at first. Everything was just coming in all at once. And over time, your brain grows neural pathways to figure out what's important and categorizes all of these different sounds for your brain to learn. When you're from the moment you're born, you start processing all of the sounds that are going on. I tell parents all the time, your child may say their first word about 1 year old. That's 365 days of listening and then processing, what should I do with that sound? And then how do I get it out of my mouth? I'm sure all of us already know how to speak. So it's just that time listening and figuring out, oh, that's my new version of a door knock. That's my new version of utensils on a plate. I remember when I first got activated, my cochlear implant, I'm like, dinner is so noisy. There's knives, there's salt and pepper shakers, there's clinking, clacking, all of these, there's ice in cups. What's going on? I couldn't pay attention to what people were saying because there was like a symphony around me. And it took me time to sort out, okay, I want to listen to voices. Okay, that sound is, somebody's pouring water. Oh, there's a tea kettle whistling, all of these things. And I got to settle down, so to speak, within my ears. My right side, I chose to do my right side 3 years later. It adjusted pretty much like within a month. So it's very different between the two ears even. And everybody's different. Everybody will go at their own pace. And it depends on many different variables. How long were you deaf? How long did you wear hearing aids for? How often did you wear hearing aids for? How's the integrity of that hearing nerve? Everybody from all walks of life have different variables that we take into consideration when we're looking to see if a person is a candidate or not. So it was very interesting. I got to see a surgery for graduate school, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before I actually did it myself. And I wouldn't recommend going in person as a patient, but it was very eye-opening as a student and very different for when it was my turn to get up on the table. But very, 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 very profound experience because I was going through studying to be an audiologist when I was getting it. So I got to see both sides. I got to be a patient and I got to be a professional, which was interesting. And I think it lends to I'm able to like provide the types of content or those posts that Janie has printed out in the newsletter, because I can be a bridge between patient and professional and put into words for each party what our needs are, what we're feeling here. I think it's really hard to talk to a professional about hearing, like what's difficult or what it sounds like, or I can't pinpoint exactly what I want you to change if they haven't gone through it, if they don't know what it sounds like or feels like. And I just started sharing on Instagram because, well, number one, my patients were growing up and starting to have kids. So they were asking me, Michelle, how do you wake up at night? Do you like, who wakes up when the baby, how do you hear the baby cry? And I thought, I just go through life the way I know. Like, I need to do this, so I need to figure something out. How much could I help other people by sharing these little things that I do? And gosh, 2 years later, it's just been so well received because I'm able to put into words or pictures what some of you may be feeling, or it's just easier to be like, hey, would you check some of these, infographics out, because I don't know how to explain it for you. So I'm here to empower you. I'm here to share my experiences, both professional and personal. I have no qualms for whatever questions that you may want to ask about my journey, or professional questions, or about cochlear implants, how they may work, or what the experience may be like. I know we did get one question: how has it changed my working life? So very much, actually. As I mentioned before, I wouldn't hear a fire truck. I would feel a fire truck before I heard it. That being said, I would not be able to hear somebody running behind me in a dark parking garage at night if I were, getting off work late or something. So for me, part of it was safety. Part of it was seeing, how much am I actually missing? You don't know what you're missing often in the realm of hearing or not hearing, because the words aren't still there afterwards. If you can't read something, if you can't read the newspaper, you need to get your eyes checked. You can see that it's fuzzy. With hearing, you say something and I miss it, I don't know that I missed it all the time. So that's when I decided to get the cochlear implant, and my confidence just rose so much because I could hear feet on the ground, because I could hear the telephone ringing, or I could finally understand. I'm never going to say 100% of conversations, but I could hear much more of the conversation than I could before. I would not have moved out to San Diego. I'm from Ohio originally, by myself, to start a job on my own. So little things, and I realize now when I talk to people about it, when I talk with you about it, how much those little things added up. For example, I did not talk on the phone for about 20 years, except with my mom. I couldn't even understand my dad. It was only my mom, and it was pretty much, what time are you picking me up? 2:00, meet me outside. It was like a where and a when kind of conversation. And it wasn't, I could never have, get to know you conversations or catch up conversations on the phone. I didn't attend movie theaters for about 15 years of my life, because why? The lights would dim and I would just fall asleep, or I would bother my brother too much because I was asking him, what did they say? What did they say? And as a kid, I definitely had zero interest in animated movies because there was no accent. What could I hear? What could I hear? So I'm watching Frosty the Snowman this winter with my children. I have a 4.5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 10-month-old right now. And I looked over at my husband. I said, I actually don't know the story of Frosty the Snowman. So we went on YouTube, we found a closed caption version, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember these scenes, but I don't have any recollection what this story is about. So I am now much more confident on the telephone. I need to talk to patients. I need to talk to administrators, secretaries, schedulers. I need to talk to hearing aid and cochlear implant manufacturers. I need to talk to parents. I definitely do. I like to stream Bluetooth to both ears, so I have the advantage of both ears. But if needed, I'm able to, you find that sweet spot with the phone up near your microphone. But I prefer to either use a headset that goes over both ears and or Bluetooth so that I can communicate well with that. I work in a group office, so there's about maybe 8 or 9 of us in a group office, and we're not always facing each other. Our computers are facing the walls, so I'm able to have conversations, but that doesn't mean I just don't, I'm not assertive with saying, could you get my attention first before you talk to me? And I wasn't always graceful as a child. I would definitely say, hey, I can't hear you. That's not fair. You need to speak up. You need to wear my microphone. But over the years, I've come up with different phrases that I use, such as, what you have to say is important to me. Could you get my attention before talking? Or would you mind facing me so that I could get everything that you say? When you put the other person's expressions or their conversation into importance, it helps them want to help you. Because I've been there. I've been, the person that gets frustrated with my husband or my brother or my family or friends have just been, never mind, I don't want to repeat myself. And if you can work together, communication is a two-way street. I could have a much better chance to understand you if you flick the lights to get my attention, because guess what? I'm watching TV or I'm really into this book. It's not fair for you to assume that I can hear the very first and last word of your entire sentence while I'm reading something that's just so interesting to me. Think about it. We don't do this to 4 or 5-year-olds. We say, hey, Johnny, hey, Susie, can I have your attention, please? Like a first grade teacher. Okay, is everybody listening? Eyes on me. Here's my message. Okay, go off and do whatever job that I asked you to do. Adults don't always do that. We take for granted what we can do. We think that everybody else goes about life the same way that we do. So if we had normal hearing, I assume that you have normal hearing because it is an invisible disability. It is really hard. And it's to our advantage to get to know ourselves and our disability or our hearing loss as well as we can, because everybody's is different. Hearing loss is a spectrum. Perhaps somebody cannot hear the high frequencies. And they may not choose to wear a device. Or maybe they don't have access to those high frequencies with that device because maybe the severity of their hearing loss. The severity of my hearing loss is not, on my shirt for everybody to see. So how can they know? And I'm just on this mission to empower those with hearing loss or deaf or hard of hearing families so that we can all work together and really include everybody, give accessibility to everyone, because having hearing loss can be so isolating. And if you don't have the words or the tools or the infographics just to hand out to your friends and family, it gets lonelier and lonelier over time because people think, oh, they don't care what I have to say. I'm not even going to try, or I get frustrated yelling. He or she never pays attention. What if, Johnny over there just attended a lecture or just went to church and he or she is tired from listening? There's listening fatigue going on, but then family is meeting them after church for brunch or lunch, and they get frustrated. Why aren't they listening to me? It could be because he's so tired from listening to the sermon in church, and now we're at a brunch in the noisiest restaurant, of course, that you picked, but it has the best food. But so take into consideration all of these different things. Is it dark in this restaurant? Is it nicely lit? Can we have a circle table instead of a long table so that we can see everybody's faces to get visual access? All of those things need to be taken into account, and without the community being more aware of these, it's going uphill. It's a difficult uphill battle. I don't know if I finished my story. I mean, so now I'm a but if you have any questions at all, oh, there's one in the chat. What brand of cochlear implants do I have? So I have Cochlear Americas, and as an audiologist, I don't push any brand more than the other. And I'll tell you, as an audiologist or as a student audiologist, I studied all of the different brands, and I literally chose Cochlear Americas because it was the least ugly at the time, and because it had rechargeable and disposable battery options. All three manufacturers, I actually love working with all of them. Can you direction find on sound? What is direction find? Or if somebody shouts at you from the side, do you know, can I localize? I think is a question. So localization is pretty difficult, but I am able to do it some of the time. Localization is more of a temporal thing if you have two devices. So if both of my devices are programmed well, the sound comes in from one area and hits that second ear a split second after. And for that, I need to do more practice. I practice with elevators. I close my eyes and I try to hear where the ding comes from. Voices is pretty easy to tell where they come from. I think, though, because I can feel it, I'm very sensitive to feeling sounds and feeling, door shuts or stomping on the feet. I can feel that really well. What about whispers? I can absolutely hear whispers, but in a loud situation, people just naturally go to your ear to whisper. I actually back up and say, actually, can I read your lips? And you don't need to whisper or don't even use your voice. I'd rather have a visual than hearing whispers, because it is hard. They take away, when people whisper, it's only the fricatives or the high frequency sounds. Do I still have problems in groups, restaurants? Absolutely. Even normal hearing people have difficulty in group settings. However, it is much, much better than how I heard with hearing aids. And I do use the multi-mic on a daily basis. I put it on my children. I put it on my husband. I put it on my friends while we take a walk, mostly just so that I don't have to strain to get visual cues as much. And that multi-mic really brings that voice about 6 inches away from my ear. And it's so nice. If you have Cochlear America devices, have you put the smart app on your phone? I do have the smart app on my phone, but I don't use it very often. With my device, you can program up to 4 programs into the processor, maybe one louder, one softer, one for music, or one for noisy situations. But I prefer to let my brain get used to things instead of always needing to, oh, I'm in this situation, I need to figure out a program for it. I would rather have the device set to a level, know what's going on, and adapt up here naturally if possible. Elliot had a hand up.
Yes, Michelle, thank you. Your presentation was terrific. I and a number of our chapter members are bilateral cochlear implants, and
Okay.
we can really identify what you had just described. I'd be interested to know, in your work with pediatric patients, in your work with small kids, how do they measure the need for a cochlear implant? For example, Medicare, you've got to be below 50 or 40% comprehension to qualify. How do they apply the same standards for young children who may have just started to speak at all?
Great question. We are actually much more conscientious and strategic when we're working with children. We take a look at their family. Do they have the means to get to speech therapy and to all of the appointments that this entails? My favorite ENT, she did my right cochlear implant, and she's the ENT for our team at our hospital. She says, I'm just the plumber. I put the device in, and it's the audiologist, the speech therapist, and the patient that does all of the work. Just like an orthopedic surgeon, he just puts the bone brace or whatever plate into your body you need to do the rehab. But when we evaluate the children, we take a look at family, so psychiatry or social work. We take a look at we do a speech evaluation to see, are they receiving language? Does their brain comprehend language? It could be visual or auditorily. How is their expressive language? Are they motivated to do so? The ENT takes a look at physical or anatomical things, and we do testing on children. We have different age lists. So for an adult, we would do AZ Bio sentence testing or CNC consonant, like single word lists, and see how their speech discrimination is. We have testing for children that's younger, but then for the children, for the infants that are younger than 2 years old who don't have as much language, we take a look at what they're getting with their hearing aids. How much are they receiving? And we can see how much benefit they're receiving or not receiving from there. It doesn't solely depend on that 60% of word discrimination.
Yeah, I was just wondering what metrics the insurance companies use to decide whether they're going to pay for it.
So my hospital actually created, it's called a CHIP. And it stands for Cochlear Children's something implant profile. And it's our pre-CI evaluation process. And we take a look at social skills, what the speech language pathologist evaluates, how the ENT evaluates, and we have a grading scale for them, whether or not they would be a good implant candidate as a family or not.
And the insurance companies will accept that.
Yep. Yeah, they love the profile that we've created.
Yeah.
Many children's hospitals have adapted. Yeah, absolutely. Sally.
Hi, Michelle. I agree. This has been a wonderful presentation. It's every time I hear a presentation about CIs, I learn more things, and I'm blessed to have two, as well as you. I had a question that you brought up about nighttime with your 3 children. What do you do about that?
So I'm a military spouse, and my husband is gone often, so I had to figure something out. In the beginning, I first with my first child, I totally wore my devices all the time. I was just nervous. I was like, oh no, what if, they stop breathing? What if they hiccup? What if they scream out and something's going on? Over time, I've learned it's okay. But eventually I needed to put myself first. I sleep better without my devices on. Am I getting a good quality sleep in turn? And am I being a good mother if I'm not getting quality sleep? So what I would actually do is I have the baby monitor set up next to a sound receiver, which can be used as a baby cry like signaler, and that's hooked up to my sonic boom alarm clock. So if the cry gets to a certain level that I can set, because, you know, sometimes babies just stretch at night and they just cry out once. If that sound is coming from the monitor loud enough, then it'll shake my bed like my alarm clock does. And I have that under my pillow right now. I used to have it underneath the whole mattress, but decide when my husband doesn't need to wake up every single time.
That's great to know. I also was just wanting to comment about my own experience with hearing after my CIs. I was very, very blessed to be able to hear well very quickly. So I just wanted to share that because for some people, it is longer process, and for some people, it's a much shorter process. And I literally, in the day that I was activated, I was able within a half an hour to hear pretty clear.
That's awesome.
I know, it was amazing. Now, it did sound like Mickey Mouse. It was very high pitched, so forth. But that was an extraordinary experience for me. My second CI, which was 12 years later, took a little longer. Was but it was under a week for me with the second one. So I just wanted to share that for other people listening, that it can be a very quick process, and for other people, it's a longer process.
Yeah, most of the time with adults who have been aided for most of their duration of deafness, it's very, very quick. The day of, they can understand between the ooh, the ah, the sh sounds. It's not uncommon to see that. I just don't want to put that out and promise that it's going to be like that right away, because then realistic expectations are not met. How many, so Sally and Elliot have cochlear implants. Does anybody else in this business? Robert? Any questions about cochlear implants from those non-users, or any questions about cochlear implants from the ones who already have them? What do you love about it? Like, I love that I can take them off and on, honestly.
Well, Michelle, I'll jump in again. I just like to know from your experience with not only your own cochlear implants, but your patients. How many of them have had problems, I don't know how to phrase this exactly, have problems listening to music afterwards? Because in my case, that is the biggest downside for cochlear implants, that music sounds just pretty awful. And but I know other CI users have not had that experience, at least to that degree. What would you say about that?
So for me, I can say now it's much better. In the beginning, music sounded very high pitch, not full. I grew up playing piano. My brother played violin and he was in a youth symphony orchestra. So I definitely have appreciation for different instruments. I would talk with your audiologist to take a look at those low frequencies, see what they can do for music, because that's where the nuances and the beauty and the details of music comes from. Anybody can, with a cochlear implant, can probably hear the high pitches well, the percussion, the beat. That is pretty easy, in quote, to program, but it's the lower pitches and turning off of any automatic vocal recognition technology in your cochlear implant program. Like, what manufacturer do you wear?
It was Med-El.
So they can take a look at all of the different low pitches and work, if they don't feel as confident with the programming, work together with the rep to see what you can do with music. Because understanding how music comes in is where you can start to churn your wheels and think about, what can I add in for this patient for a specific music program that'll make it sound much more round and robust and beautiful.
Well, that's a good tip.
Mhm.
I'll try that.
Does the magnetic nucleus stay, wait, oh, the coil, is that what you're asking about, Kathy?
Yes, I heard that there is a piece that goes on the scalp. Is that called the nucleus with the cochlear implant, with cochlear
So,
Americans?
This part, the part that sticks up there is called the coil.
Mm.
And if not, the coil is not the purpose of the coil is not to keep it securely on your head. The portion that goes behind your ear is what's more important for retention. Because if that magnet were to be tighter and tighter and tighter, I would worry about the skin flap there. So as an audiologist, I don't want it to be too tight. For that reason, I personally like to use ear molds for retention on mine, but you don't have to. If this was super tight, it would actually hurt and the signal would not be as good.
No, I mean using the magnetic application instead of behind the ear.
So only up there. It's called the Canzo.
Canto. Mhm.
It stays to your scalp pretty well, but I still recommend the hair clip that it would attach with.
The Kenzo comes with a hair clip.
For that brand. So Medel has something called Rondo 2. Cochlear has Canzo, Kanso. And Advanced Bionics does not have an off the ear model right now. You want to go ahead, Robert?
Thank you.
Robert, you had your hand up?
I was just going to say that I've had no difficulty with music because I was a musician before I lost my hearing, which was actually quite a loss. So for many years I would only listen to talk radio. But about 6 weeks after that, I put on the processor, then I realized I could listen to music again and I could distinguish different instruments and that sort of thing. It was really great.
Did it sound the same, or did it kind of,
It did.
For an old version of music, or do you appreciate it now?
Well, first of all, the more I appreciate most the things I used to play. And then, but I know that sometimes, for example, there's this string orchestra composition called Adagio for Strings. Okay. When I played that in the middle of a string orchestra, I was a cellist. It was just really, you just felt it. It was right there. But when I listened to it outside, that's not the same thing.
Not the same.
And yet I've listened to it a couple of times lately, and now it's starting to sound more like what I remember. So anyway, that was a big deal for me. That was a real loss to lose it, and to get it back was great. One other thing is, I for a long time with my hearing aids and my CIs, I would take them off at night and I would sleep well. But my wife actually got kind of bothered by this because we have a couple dogs and suddenly she's up all night going after and taking care of the dogs and stuff. So I started wearing one of my backup hearing aids each night. So I switch so that your connection goes.
Yeah. So that your skin flap gets a little break. I understand that. we used to have 3 17-year-old dogs, and they needed lots of help at night. For a little while, my husband was gone, so I would have the devices on. And when he came home, I said, you know, you get to you get to handle that. But I understand why your wife is frustrated, and it's really nice of you to put your device on.
Well, the other thing I did is I have these N6s, which are the original ones I had, and I still have the controller for it, and so I changed it and turned it down.
Okay, so then you
So I can hear things, but it doesn't wake me up particularly.
I will say, I've heard from other spouses, and it didn't matter if it was the husband or wife. Even if they had normal hearing, they would sometimes still sleep through babies or crying or
Yeah.
dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Sally. Oh, we can't hear you, Sally.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to comment on music. I am a symphony bug. I have gone to symphony for 30 years, and even when before my implants. And of course, I didn't hear a whole lot as with my hearing aids as much as I do now. And there's been such an improvement since my cochlear implants that I don't notice that what I'm not getting. And recently, I got a new car, and I turned the radio on, which I have never listened to the radio for years because I couldn't understand what they were saying, and I just didn't want to be bothered. And I could actually hear clearly what they were saying on the radio. And then they put music on. I could hear the words. So it was like I had an old car, and I never bothered to, listen to music on it. So I think, like Bob said, over time, I have been able to appreciate music more. And of course, it also helped me initially to listen to music that I knew the words from. Of course, that is understandably would make it easier. And that was the same CDs that I played for years, and I knew the words too. But now I've been able to hear the words better, which has shocked me. And it's because I have a new radio, and maybe my hearing has improved with the CIs as well.
I'm sure. One of the biggest frustrations that I get from adults or young adults is it doesn't sound clear yet. It doesn't sound like how it used to be. Or that person could hear better within 2 months, or they could understand in noisy situations. It's really hard not to compare yourself with somebody else, but you really need to back off, hold on, and only compare yourself to you however many months ago. How far have I gone? Take a look at that progress. And if you focus on something and put all of your eyes on that one sound or voice or thing, it's always going to be very big and apparent in your mind. If you back up a little bit, like you said, you just didn't listen to music for a little while, Bob, and then you went back, you were like, oh, wait, now I can. Take a little break and just live your life. Sometimes parents often focus on one sound that their child may not be able to hear, when if you lived life and realize that you're still practicing by, through just everyday routine and everyday living your life, you're still practicing, you're still progressing. Your brain is still going to create those new neural pathways, and eventually it will get there. Like Bob, you said you played cello. Now it kind of sounds like how it used to. But if you focused on it every single time, you wouldn't see those small 1% improvements in progress along the way. So it's wonderful to it's kind of like seasons. The roses in the spring are that much more beautiful when you go through a winter, and just appreciate the different ups and downs that life has to offer.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm a pediatric audiologist now. I created my Instagram and Facebook on maternity leave because I missed my patients. And I feel like I'm making a bigger difference here, being a voice or just sharing my experience and opening the doors for community to see and become more aware of what being a deaf and hard of hearing adult may look like. So I'm really enjoying it, and I'm happy to be, here and being able to talk to communities and chapters such as yours. I put my contact information in the chat. I can do it again. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'm available. Janie often emails me and asks me if she can put my content in her newsletter, and I love that. I'll definitely be at HLAA next year. And I think HLAA was my first time going to a conference as a deaf and hard of hearing adult. I had before gone as a professional, but it was very eye-opening and wonderful to be within that community, and everything is closed caption is great.
Mhm.
Okay, I think Janie had to leave.
She had to take someone to the airport.
Right. So is there somebody from the chapter? You're finished, Michelle?
Yeah, totally fine. Yeah, complete.
So is there anybody from the chapter who wants to close the meeting?
I thought that Larry was going to do that. Is Larry here? That's what I heard from Janie.
Yes, I am here. Maybe Sally, maybe you could give some closing thoughts.
Okay, I actually I'm thrilled to hear your presentation, Michelle. I think coming from a person who is an audiologist who's also gone through the experience the rest of us have is really quite unique and different. And I just appreciate very much that you've been able to share so much of your life with us. And it's just been, you're the first time I have heard a speaker who had cochlear implants themselves. And I'm sure other people have, but you're the first one I've heard. And it's been wonderful to hear your experience and how you're working with the children in particular as well. I do have one question. What is the youngest child that you have worked with?
I've tested 3 months old in my clinic. During my extern, we did the newborn hearing screenings, so days or hours old. But implant, we have not implanted anyone younger than either 6 or 9 months. Typically FDA approval is 12 months, but it's getting younger and younger.
Okay, that's even younger than I've heard. In general, I've heard about a year is pretty typical. So that's wonderful to know that they're even younger than that being implanted. Thank you for that.
That actually raises another question. As children grow, I assume their cochleas grow as well. And do they have to, they don't?
Not the actual cochlea. It's an organ that ear is fully developed by about 24 weeks of gestation. So that part is fine. Your outer ear keeps growing for sure, but the internal, that does not.
So that they don't have to change the implant.
They don't need to change the internal. Every 5 years, insurance will cover a new external device, and they're usually backward compatible. So it will work with the old internal, and you can upgrade the outside part, just like hearing aids.
Have you ever heard of anyone having to replace their internal device?
Absolutely. So it's still a medical device. It can absolutely fail. All three manufacturers at some point have had failure, like many of them, and most of them, take a look at what's going on, pull it off the market, and help their patients where the internal device has failed, covering the replacement. But it's usually just from, in most cases, it's been like the hermetic seal wasn't intact. So some moisture would get in there. It's not painful for the patient. It's just some of the electrodes are shorted out. If it's not some of those along those themes, it's either car accident or sporting accident where the processor, the big part of the internal, is cracked. So that just needs to be replaced. So, but I've all of them that I have seen, the replacement has done well. They just have a little bit of a learning curve to get back up to where they were before.